7:05. I'll call to order this meeting of the Waterbury Selectboard on Monday, 4th of November, 2024. I apologize for the slight delay. We had another meeting, joint meeting with the Edward Farrar Utility District preceding this one. So we're just getting reorganized. And I'm not sure we have a projection tonight, but we are operating with Zoom. So the first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda as written.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the agenda is approved as presented. Next item is the consent agenda. There are just two items, the minutes and a tobacco license. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda as written.
Second?
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda is approved as written. Next is a public session. Anyone here to address an item that's not on the warrant agenda? I'd ask you to please come forward and please try to keep your comments to 3 minutes. Anything requiring more than that, we'll be happy to put on the agenda on the ensuing meeting. Bill, I saw your hand first.
Good evening, Bill Shepelek. This is a little bit maybe picayune, but I'm going to say it anyway. I talked to Tom about it last week, and the problem that I'm talking about has been resolved, but I couldn't help but notice that on Guptill Road and Howard Ave and Hollow Road, there were signs put up during the foliage time that said local traffic only. And I have a couple of concerns about that. Number one, I don't believe there's an ordinance that restricts those roads to local traffic. Signage is, there's a lot of signs out there. Signs are kind of ugly. If you have a lot of them, they're hard to read, understanding, what you're supposed to be looking at. I'm not sure they could have been effectual at all because you couldn't see the signs until you turned onto the roads. So you have to turn from Route 100 onto Guptill Road, and then there's a sign and you can't make a U-turn, so that's problematic. But more than that, I'm just concerned that it sends a bad message to the people that are here. A couple of meetings ago, the gentleman who runs Cold Hollow Cider was here, and yes, he was talking about concerns about traffic on Route 100 and how people get frustrated that they can't turn into his parking lot or they can't get out of his parking lot. Should there be turning lanes? Should there be lights? But, the state counts on tourists to come here. And I talked to him after that meeting, and he told me that, he said if it wasn't for foliage season, he said we wouldn't be open. We make 75–80% of our revenue during that month-long period. So it sends a bad message. And then finally, they're public highways. The town gets $123,000 a year from the state for maintenance and repair of highways. Guptill Road's a Class 2 highway. You get more money for a Class 2 highway than you get for a Class 3 highway, and less than a Class 1 highway, which Main Street is. I checked with Alec Tuscany and Bill Woodruff, the bridge that was just repaired on Guptill Road. There was no state bridge grant this year for that. I guess you used ARPA money. But there's many bridges on that road, and we repaired that bridge a few years ago, painting beams. We apply for state grants for that. And finally, you've got now a local option tax. So we want you to come to our town, we want you to spend money, we want you to pay a tax to us, but we don't want you to drive on our roads. So I think it's a bad look, and I would hope that they don't go up again. I understand people who live on Guptill Road. It's not a real shortcut. You come up that way, you're just gonna come back to Route 100. But those cars that are there, they do give a little bit more room on Route 100 for that traffic to move. So from my perspective, it's a bad look. I don't think you have the authority to put the signs up because you don't have an ordinance, and I wish you wouldn't do it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Good comments. Yes.
We're all together.
Come on up, all three.
And my daughter Olivia has written something that we're wondering if somebody would read. She's a little afraid to read. I could
Do you want to read it?
Sure.
All right. And your name is?
My name is Kristen.
Oh,
And this is Tony.
Tony, Laura?
Justine Barrett.
And Olivia, so I'm kind of sad if I read this. Tina, will you read it? It makes me sad.
So to give you a little bit of background of the reason why we're here, we're not the type of people that come to your meetings, okay? New faces. So we have an issue in this town, and it is a big drug issue, okay? You guys, people can put their blinders on, the state police can work and do their job, you know, diligency, and then they get a slap on the wrist, and, you know, they're out either that afternoon or the next day, doing the same thing over and over again. We've been dealing with this for about 4 years now.
We live down on Route 2, down by the Forest Field.
Yep.
And it's been the same players involved in this. The cops have been called multiple times, state police, we got them on speed dial, done online tips, which we've been told in person to do from VSB. My brother's actually on the drug task force, told me things to do, and there's not been one bit of change since the pandemic started. It's the same houses, the same people. We see them constantly, every day.
There's four drug houses and about 15 residents that have been affected, and we have kids who've been traumatized, since you can see in this letter. We have daycares who are having parents bring their kids in while gunshots are being fired. We have police chases through the daycare yards. We have
Just
cars being
2
broken
weeks ago,
into.
you know, people got their cars broken into, stuff was stolen from 2 or 3 different residences. You know, I mean, and the guy gets caught from Burlington. You know, the guy that murdered another guy up north, he was walking on Route 2
He
the
stayed
day
down
before.
in these homes for months and months.
6 months at least, he was walking back and forth all of our
Yep.
streets.
Called the cops on him multiple times because he was all high and acting weird right in the middle of Route 2. Nothing.
Yeah.
So, you know, we were told, you know, that Teresa Wood and Stevens were having a little get-together up here. And so I pulled in the crew, said, oh, you know, we're gonna go speak to them. I didn't realize, you know, like I said, I'm not a, how do I wanna say, I don't go to election stuff or, you know, whatever. I thought we could speak.
Go ahead.
And, you know, but, so when I got there, Steven said to me, you know, I got there earlier, and he said, well, you're more than welcome to come open up the dialogue. And I said, really? Okay, I'm gonna open up the dialogue. You know, had a lengthy conversation with Teresa. You know, Teresa was going to come and talk to people here, because point blank, we've had it.
Right. We don't know what to do.
And
Our kids are afraid to play in the yard. Every day, there are cars, there are people walking up and down the street. Cars in the middle of the night, you can hear their loud mufflers going behind, parking behind homes. Cars with outer state plates going in and out of the same residence for the past 4 years. And
And if you don't believe us, come sit on our front porch.
No, I do believe.
And you can watch it.
And this is not the first time we've heard about it.
yeah, and you know, we're asking for help. You know, the whole state is down police officers. It's down stadies, but we don't know what to do.
our children are asking
I can't imagine what the people up in the trailer park are feeling,
Oh, I'll read it.
you know?
I'll read it. Dear Waterbury town officials, my name is Olivia Laura. I'm 11 years old, and I live right next to a group of druggies. It's very scary because every single time I hear a boom, I think it's a gunshot. I see scary people walking up and down the street. I hear very loud and sketchy cars going by. They wake me up in the middle of the night. Whenever I'm playing outside, I never feel safe. My parents do not let me stay at home alone. I wish I could live somewhere where I could play outside without being scared. I look out the window and look out the window and not see sketchy people walk by and more police officers to help. Sincerely, Olivia Laura,
It is nonstop.
since 2019.
The same people over and over and over again. Minus one, because now he's in jail for murder. So that's,
The one, so I met with Tom and Teresa, forget if it was last Thursday or Friday, and they wanted to set up a community meeting with Lieutenant Howard and with the state's attorney for Washington County to see what more could be done, if anything. We've got a contract with the state police for 2 troopers. Doesn't give you a lot of coverage in reality, 80 hours a week on paper after training and time off, it's probably closer to 60. It's been a constant focus for them, I know. It's been a constant challenge. I know they can't do enough. I guess the one bright spot, which is not something we can take credit for, it just happened, is one of the vacant properties that has been a source of this. It's gone through probate, and it's being sold on Wednesday. So
it just moved across the street.
Now, yeah, they
Down
just
the road.
moved
Yep.
down the road.
Yeah.
So now there's 3 other properties. It's still there, still going on, even though that one is, one neighbor on one side has less, now it's just down the street.
yeah, and it's,
And Tom said to me, he goes, oh, like, he was oblivious to it. I'm like, you guys are representatives of our town. How can you tell me you don't know that this is going on? I mean, that just totally blew my mind.
yeah, the reality of the state police right now, and this is not just in Washington County, but it's in all of Vermont, is they've got, the Berlin Barracks covers all of Washington County. They've got 8 troopers. And I thought I just heard one is out on leave for some time now. But the reality is that at full staff, they're 15. So they're not in a position where they can really do much in the way of proactive investigative work. That's just a sad reality of.
You're gonna see people have to move out of town because they can't continue to get flooded and have to deal with this unsafe behavior. 'Cause we can't.
But it's not just that, people are gonna start taking things that matters into their own hands, I mean, people were like, oh, the 4th of July came, what, a Roman candle didn't hit it? That's surprising.
Like, we had one walk right through her yard. And
From the
her
highway.
son
From the highway,
Cut
get-
down, jumped over
get
the
off the
fence,
highway. I
and he
gotta-
said, get off my property. He's like, F you, I know my rights. And
All
he was right.
scabbed
There's
up,
no
shirtless,
trespassing.
I'm like, what the heck are you doing in my
We've got
backyard?
no trespassing signs, we have cameras, this is stuff we didn't
Yeah,
have in the
I know.
past.
Yeah.
And
Thank
it's,
you.
we need help. 'Cause we're
And we don't wanna
running
be
out of
like,
options.
appeased. We're done being appeased. And we're not the only neighbors in this town. Tom said, oh, I talk to people in town all the time and they feel safe. I'm like, you know something? Go 1 to 2 miles out of town and ask those people.
Like, I can tell you what I hear, just my sense. I'm just one person. It's an opinion at this point. It could be wrong, but the sense I have from talking to people is that it's not just your neighborhood, that there's a gathering belief that we need more of a police presence in Waterbury, whether that's state police or in theory our own police force. And what I say to people, you don't want to hear this, but it's what I say to people because it's what I believe is the truth, is that if the taxpayers said to me, your budget's unlimited, go create a police department, I can't do it. There's no officers out there. It's not a matter of money, it's a matter of people. So, that's
What
not
are
even,
the options?
the options are
Wait for
to,
stuff to get stolen or a stray bullet to come across the street.
I-
I mean, the guy shot an AR-15 100 feet from the bus stop. They
I,
don't care.
I don't have any better option for you, I can tell you right now. I'm hoping the state's attorney or the state police might have some better options, but I can tell you, I don't have any tools in my toolbox. I wish I could tell you something better, that I had some resources I could deploy, but I simply do not, sir.
I mean, the challenge is even that, even if the police arrest them, the
The state's-
judicial, the judicial system isn't, throwing them in jail and
No,
throwing
they're
them
not.
in
They're right back
jail.
out.
They're back out, so
Yeah.
it's,
That troopers tell me they were still doing the paperwork when one of them,
Yeah.
Springfield, that guy came in and got his stuff, he's out.
Yeah, Mike?
I can't but all agree with you 100%. I'm maybe not of the opinion that, I don't think if we had a few officers, that's gonna create any problem. I think it really starts from the direction that the Attorney General gives down to the state's attorneys, because it's a revolving door for these criminals. Just on TV, they had some guy who has 270, to me, that person.
Conditions.
Right, that person should have
Seriously?
been locked up after 5. I used to be on the state police, Central Vermont State Police Advisory Board, and things have just gotten worse. I don't necessarily think, even if we had 10 police officers here in town, would that necessarily help? I think until there's a deterrent statewide where
Well-
people are going to jail.
There's accountability.
Right,
Start
exactly.
making a precedent.
Exactly, and that's where I think where Tom said, it's a little bit out of our bailiwick, as much as I'm surprised that Tom Stevens was not knowledgeable about what's going on. I think most of us on the board, we've heard this, I've spoken to the troopers, and they said that's what a lot of their time's spent on, is these drug issues, so they can't do things that we would like to see, is like some of the speed enforcement things that people have.
And they're driving around with paper plates, and it's been the same, nobody's been not registered cars. Gotta imagine they don't pay any insurance or anything, they're not getting pulled over
As you
for
said,
all these
it's-
minor
As you
things.
said, it's accountability,
Yeah.
and once these things happen, unfortunately, I know the corrections probably don't have enough space to put all these criminals, but we have to figure out some way to, if there is lawlessness, that people have to be held, as you say, accountable, and I agree with you.
Okay. Again, this is not on the agenda for tonight, but I do appreciate you guys bringing this
Thank you.
forward to our attention. What we will do is put this on the agenda for an upcoming meeting, if not on the 18th, it was the first meeting in December. And we can try to get Lieutenant Howard back and really explore what could be an effective option to at least get somebody to take some action.
Okay.
Can you get the state prosecutor here and the attorney general here too?
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comments? Yeah.
Just 2 public announcements. One, just reminding everyone that the polling location in Waterbury for the general election tomorrow is Brookside Primary School, 47 Stowe Street. Hours are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. If you have not voted by mail, please bring your ballot with you to the polls, if at all possible. It makes it easier for our poll workers. If you don't have it, that's okay. You can sign an affidavit and still vote, but I hope everyone votes tomorrow if they haven't already.
Thank you. Alyssa?
Lower priority. There's a survey about the town plan on the homepage of the town website for anyone interested. It's open until December 1st.
All right. Any other public comments? Hearing none, we'll move forward. The Armory Shelter update. Ian and Tom and myself were able to go visit the Armory on Friday. And It's been equipped now with 10 pods for families with 8-foot walls. Tom, I don't know if you have any further updates you'd like to?
No, I mean, showing the
Provide?
pictures isn't gonna be very helpful with the screen down.
Right.
As of today, there are no families in the shelter yet. The similar one they have in Williston does have, apparently has quite a few families. And from what I've gathered, they're hoping to have families in by the end of the week, but it doesn't sound like it's 100% a certainty. They're working with a number of families, but I think one of the impediments that Chris Winters had mentioned is that if you take a shelter bed, you lose eligibility for a hotel bed.
That
So I
is,
think-
were you able to confirm that?
Well, I went back and watched the meeting, and that's what
Mhm.
he said, so I didn't double check it, but
Mhm.
but I think that's a little bit of impediment to going into the
Right.
shelter.
Because the motel program is coming back 1st of December.
Yeah. Monica Ogilvy and Beth Ann Mayer are also still involved, and I think the minute families are there, there'll be boots on the ground to see what they can offer. Library has made a similar promise that as soon as families are there, they'll see what they can do to help people.
I just have
Okay.
a clarifying question. So if they take a shelter bed, they don't qualify for a motel bed, and that program it comes back to life essentially in December? So they have a month, they're trying, like, you essentially are holding out for a month to try and get a motel bed?
That's my understanding.
Fascinating.
Yeah, well, also maybe a question of placement. because,
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, like,
It's also maybe an issue, the conditions up at the Armory are pretty spartan. And compared to like, just seen it on TV, the former Williston State Police Barracks, it's a pretty nice facility, you know. It was used as a barracks, you know, there was minimum probably fit up, you know, it's much more homey than I would say that the Armory is. And, you know, if someone had an option, that's, to me, would be probably, you know, they're gonna seek something like that versus go to the Armory. I think the Armory is gonna be last scenario.
mhm, that's a possibility. I did take some photos, we will be in the roundabout, in the roundabout now, or?
We were there this afternoon. Gordon and I went as well.
Take better photos, Howard.
So we.
Yeah. There you go.
I haven't had a chance to write it up yet. There's 3 families in Williston as of today.
Okay.
And apparently one family may be moving in Waterbury as soon as tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah. Monica said that they were interviewing 8 families on Friday, who were on the list of potential people to move in. So, we'll see how that goes, but to your point, Mike, you know, it's plywood walls, open ceiling, so that's not gonna be everybody's first choice, maybe, but I think they've done a remarkable job with what they have, and they have, you know, cots and some degree of separation and clean restrooms, so. You know, people will make educated choices, we hope. All right, any other questions or comments about the Armory update? No?
No.
All right, we'll move on. Skate park, the funding request. We have members of the skate park coalition to come forward and present their request.
I see.
And Mike, our screen's not working, but they did get your packet.
Okay, keep it on.
Here you go. So if you wouldn't just mind introducing yourselves, and then we did get the packet, so you can sort of lead us through it.
Great. Well, my name is Jake Ferreira. This is Mike Rossi, representing the Waterbury Skate Park Coalition. We have a few other members with us tonight, Belle, Tammy, and Lauren. We wanted to come to you guys tonight, give you a financial update, just a status update on the skate park right now. For background, for those who don't know, we've been working with the town since 2019. locating and planning. And we're heavily involved in the recreation master planning for Hope Davy and Ice Center. And in 2023, we removed the existing ramps that were at Hope Davy. And we recently have gotten a design and a contractor on board, and as of 3 weeks ago, we got DRB approval to build. We are really hoping to build in the summer of 2025, and our full budget for that is $250,000. So far, we've been able to fundraise $160,000 in the bank, with $190,000 that we feel the strong confidence pledged to us. That's left us with a $60,000 gap before summer 2025. We've been working closely with Tom and Katerina, and it suggested that there might be some funds available through the 1% local option tax. So the main reason we're here tonight is to ask for some funding from the town of $50,000 to help us close the gap. That would allow us to build our permitted park, the full park. The way it is designed, if we don't hit the full number, we will be able to either phase the park or remove pieces. But we really feel that the town deserves this full park, and that would be a really great, community asset and amenity for the skaters in and around in Waterbury. Anything else to add to that?
No, I think that's good, well said. Just if you guys have any questions, or maybe a couple of questions about the process in the event you are interested in giving us some money, like we just wonder how that works schedule-wise. What's the process to get that allocated to this project? Just wondering if there's any information on that for us. First, the request and any questions that you guys have.
Yeah, Mike.
I know, I was at the DRB meeting, and it's an interesting discussion. I know one of the issues that came up with is handicapped access between different pieces of the park. Has that ever been really figured out? I know there's some handicapped accessibility, but, not quite accessible between other, functions of the park, like we're over by the pavilion, having a handicapped way between that area.
Yeah, we've been working with Katerina the best we can to accommodate that and future-proof the park as much as we can. But the DRB requested that we don't have to stick our nose into that planning, since it's kind of future planning. And as far as I know, I don't know if there's a full master plan or plan for the connections there. But I do know it's on the rec committee and Katerina's agenda purview to figure that out. So Tom might actually know a better status update than we do.
In terms of just the accessible trails?
I think just in terms of between the pavilion where the skate park is, I think in the master plan they were talking, but I don't know if that's ever been kind of fleshed out.
Yeah, so Katerina wrote a VOREC application and got some money, and that includes some money for, had a lot of little pieces, but some money for accessible trails. The bulk of it was for making the playground accessible, which it now is. If you go up there, there's a whole new surface. That's still in the works. Offhand, I don't know how much of that work is going to take place in the last half of this year versus next year.
Okay, thanks.
But yeah, it's in the Parks Master Plan. So.
Yeah, and I will say from the skate park standpoint, we have designed to have an accessible walkway into the park that you'd be able to access the basketball court and the skate park accessibly. That was about the best we could do without the additional planning.
I had a question. Hope Davy Field has notoriously poor drainage, and I'm just wondering, this sort of looks from the diagram as being like a sunken area where the skaters will be skating around in and with banks around the side. So how do you deal with drainage for this facility?
I guess I can feel that, yeah, so there will be some under drainage underneath the park, so there'll be internal drains within the skate park that will drain kind of towards the, not in the playground, but in the direction of the playground, which from our surveying is the natural low point of the field. And we'd like to install, not quite a dry well, but a gravel kind of infiltration area. We are aware that it's a high water table and that there is, a lot of water there. But in talking with the town, it doesn't seem that there's really a solvable option to pipe the water anywhere else. So, our current plan is to move the water out of the park, try to slow it down by putting in some gravel, and hope we can infiltrate as much as we can. The soil there is actually well draining soil from the USGS maps. It's just, there's just a lot of water.
Well, I don't know. Compared to Hope Davy, that place is a mess. Because I've had a lot of soccer kids come back pretty muddy. And it's just, it's clay in that soil that just doesn't drain well.
USGS maps have a broad take.
Call it loam, yeah.
But the water table's right up there.
Yeah.
That's why everybody there has to put a mound system in now, building a house there.
The basketball court elevation is about 3 feet higher than the kind of existing grade around it. So at one point it was raised up. We've proposed to cut that down 1.5 feet. And then then where we are outflowing, we're still raised up about 6 inches to a foot. So we're going to our drainage will come out above the existing ground level by at least that much. So we're still higher and hopeful that will suffice, but we've got the sign off from the town engineering department.
And what happens to the basketball court?
So in our conversations with the rec department, that the existing basketball court as is will become the skate park. And where the skate park was will become the new basketball court, and that will get resurfaced after the skate park is built. So in the same kind of construction sequence.
Okay. Other questions? Yeah, Melissa?
I just want to acknowledge the group. I know your group has been doing volunteer work for a lot of years, including writing a whole VOAC grant that unfortunately wasn't awarded, so just thank you to the whole crew. I have a couple questions around, have you coordinated with the Recreation Committee at all? I'm just going to name, clearly this is a project that's evolved over time, and that's real, and that happens all the time. When we were in the master planning phase, we were looking at the ice center area, and it was going to be all privately funded. So I'm just acknowledging that this proposal to have it be town funded is different. I'm curious about kind of coordination with the rec committee, just that in my head, if we're now in the bucket of all the recreation expenses in the town of Waterbury, I'm just thinking how this fits into things like our pool and our parks, and curious about that. And then I will just flag for me personally, not saying funding, I have questions about if this aligns with our proposed uses for the local option tax. I'm not saying that's a no to town funding. For me personally, I think maybe ARPA money that is now in our general fund might be an option, but I will say we do have kind of 4 big buckets for local option tax, and I will say, not saying there can't be an argument made, but we do have some pretty set criteria around that, so we want to get more into it. But that's me rambling. My question would be around coordination with the rec committee and kind of other stuff going on.
We haven't had this direct conversation with the rec committee. We've talked with Tom and Katarina about this, and they were on board with this request. I should say I'm on the rec committee.
Yeah, there you
Confused
That's
myself,
the liaison.
but, the town did, or the rec committee gave approval to the skate park, but there hasn't been a lot of talk about it since when that was, probably sometime last year. So this direct conversation about requesting funding hasn't really been brought up with that group.
And I guess just to be transparent, and it's on us as the select board for not having this posted somewhere, but I will say the 4 buckets in our intent for the local option tax when we proposed that to voters was around paying down debt, anything that will create long-term savings for taxpayers, so like, you know, if we need to do a IT upgrade or whatever it may be, that's used for infrastructure, and economic development. And I'm not saying you couldn't make an argument that the skate park would support one of those things, but I would say it's not like an immediate. So to me, if there was a proposal around local option tax, I would need to see that a little more clearly articulated than kind of what we have in front of us tonight.
No, I wasn't gonna interrupt you, I was waiting.
That-
Two more buckets.
That's for?
Economic development and.
Didn't I say that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to ride off of what Alyssa was saying, and maybe a petition to include a funding request for town meeting day, as it wouldn't need to meet the same criteria as asking for money from the local option tax, and town meeting day being only a few months off.
Can you explain that a little bit more? I don't understand the difference.
So the local option tax spending has their criteria, as Alyssa explained, where we have to spend it in accordance with those 4 buckets, whereas requesting money from the town via a petition on town meeting day has different or less criteria, less specific criteria than that.
But where would the money come from if it was that route, not the local option money?
From your perspective, either way, it's a town.
Right.
So-
But one doesn't raise taxes, the others does? Is that true?
Yes.
One's from the town budget, within the whole town budget, where the options tax is really a separate bucket of things. And I too, as Alyssa kind of said, you know, if we open that door, what, you know, it becomes problematic. I think a special article, you know, requesting on, in the town, you know, warrant and stuff and on,
Right.
in the town meeting, I think that's a more realistic way to
Certainly think there is an argument that it could be considered economic development. And it's certainly, you know, Waterbury is a recreation, tourism-based community, you know, and we haven't had a decent skate park, but there's been a lot of skaters who have come to the small skate park that we've had, and I think there's certainly an argument to be made for the amount of traffic that would come to this park, and also for the local stores that sell skateboards and could sell skateboards and become more involved with that. So I don't think that's the main driver of the skate park, but I certainly think an argument could be made for that.
Yeah, most towns that do that, you know, have that as a plus, and we should have represented that earlier if that wasn't, you know, we have, you know, we have mentioned that as part of the plan is to bring economic benefits to the community, so. But I don't know, what I'm feeling is it's not just, what do you think? How does it go from here? Do you guys like meet separately and vote, or, because it doesn't sound.
I'm happy to like be a candidate. So mine is just like, I didn't get a memo before this meeting. I got copies of your plan. I didn't know how much money you were asking for or for
fair
what
enough.
purpose. So you sat down and said, I want $50,000 of tax. 60.
50 probably.
50 was the request, the gap is 60, but they've requested 50. But
Oh, okay.
I'm just naming, for me personally, I'm just processing this. So I'm not at a place to say, yes. My personal gut is I think there is a pathway to some funding. I think that number is higher than I'm probably comfortable with. I would say an example of a project we funded, we allocated $20,000 of ARPA funding to the alley project. As a place-making project, recognizing that it was leveraging significant outside funding, like you all are. Again, I want to acknowledge and give kudos, you've done a ton of fundraising for something we, the taxpayers, we, the town, might not already be funding. But that was an allocation we made. Again, I'm recognizing our ARPA money is a little weird, it's black out, but to me, I think that could be a place where we might be able to find some funding. But personally, I would love to see maybe a one-page memo saying we're requesting this amount of money so that we can do this one phase just a little more clearly as an ask. Because I think it's something we are gonna get questions about from folks. And again, I'm not saying there isn't an argument for why to support it or that it's a value, but certainly tonight, I don't feel like I'm in a place with enough information to make a
Fair enough.
decision.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say you need to make or would expect, yeah.
And in terms of process, it's varied, so just to say for budget, there's a process around what Kane said where we're gonna, it's coming up quickly, month and a half. Our proposal this year is we wanna have the budget done by January, so folks can actually weigh in before town meeting, and we have opportunity to make changes, not just on the floor of town meeting in March, but ahead of that. So our meetings in December would go department by department, including recreation and things, so that would be one opportunity. That's when we do anticipate proposing or having a recommendation from the manager about how the local option tax would be spent. And then, as Kate was noting, there's always the option to petition to have a separate article as well. But that is kind of like our plan for the next month and a half. So there's ways to weigh into that, or there's ways to do like what you've done here, Revitalizing Waterbury came to a meeting with a specific request.
Yeah.
And to get on that, the petition for a special article, you would need something like 50 signatures. Oh, I don't know exactly what the number is, but
Okay.
and then by the 25th of January, something like that, in order to get it on the warrant agenda to us at the town meeting, and be voted on at the town meeting. Up or down? Yeah.
To again, coattail. What the special article does though is when your article comes up on town meeting day, you will have an opportunity to speak on it to the voters directly as they are trying to decide their budget, or our budget, all of our budget, and making a direct appeal to the voters, I think, has a far better effect than I think people think it does.
And that would also be an option potentially in conjunction with something else. So if there was a request for us and then I'm hearing that there's more need, and just saying, not that the board's gonna agree with me, but if there's X amount you get, you still wanna ask for more. That's an option that's available too.
Tom, I guess, sounds like you're all working towards this, but I just want to say, if you go back and search in the meeting minutes for skate park, you get an awful lot of select board and recreation committee over the last 5 years, and part of it was as the old park got old and eventually torn down, there was question to invest in it, and now we're in this new conversation. So whether it's on the warning or some other mechanism, I just encourage you to put it to bed one way or the other. And from your perspective, if the vote passes, you've got your funding. If the vote fails, the community is telling you to go raise private funds. But I just feel like this conversation has been brewing since before I got here, so this March is probably a good time to give it some finality.
Mike?
Yes, point blank, all along this has been represented that the skateboarding coalition was gonna be raising the money. Why do you think there's now this shortfall that you can't raise that additional funds?
I think that we've tried very hard. I think last year, our main fundraiser, Bob Up Banks, got canceled because of poor snow. That usually brings in $20,000.
We missed the Bow Rec grant last year, that's another.
Yeah, I don't think there's been great communication in terms of applying succinctly for a VORAC grant for the skate park with the town. I think it's always been a piece of something or other things that, those have to come from the town. So that hasn't always been in my favor either. I think just the challenging economic conditions of life today as well. It's just been a challenging fundraising period for us. So, we understand that, and we own that we wanted to build this with private funding, and we're still likely going to. But if the town did want to help us out, we would appreciate it.
Yeah, it was an offer from the town. We didn't necessarily request. We are now, I'm sure, but it was an idea that came out of the town, so we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Melissa?
Are you operating through a 501c3 or who's your fiscal agent?
We are operating through Forward.
Yeah.
There are fiscal agent.
I'm also just struck that there's a lot of 50% matching recreation grants, which is normally a real barrier for people, candidly, because if I'm trying to do a project from scratch, and given how much you have fundraised, I'm wondering, is there other ways the town can support you? Do you need a grant writer? Is there, I'm wondering if there's some other
Sadly,
ways we could,
the land is-
Tammy's raising her hand in the back.
Well,
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
the LCWF grant, just.
Land and Water Conservation Fund.
It
Yep.
did, and I've written to Katerina asking her if she'd be willing to sit down with us and perhaps we can be joined together and work together on that, because that grant needs to come from a municipality or a state. It can't come from.
That was my question, so we would have to be the applicant for you to pursue
Great,
those
we'd love
funds.
to work with the town on that.
And the challenge historically is that the town has its own grant ideas too and needs too, and so, you know, if we both submit, I think it's easy for the funders to sort of say Waterbury doesn't have its act together. No one gets funded. I think if the town submits, or I think if the town submits and the skate park submits, it's unlikely the skate park would be funded over a town priority. That's just the reality of the grant process.
And
So
I
it makes
don't
it a little bit
dispute that.
difficult.
I guess it requires a 50% match, so I wasn't aware of a significant investment we all were gonna have happening. That would be the 50% match. I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, but to me, is there a way we can work something together, given that
Mhm.
you can have a pretty sizable budget with the amount they've already fundraised
Yeah.
and something else. I don't wanna commit town staff. I recognize that needs to go through you, but to me, it seems compelling if there's a way to have someone else fulfill and help the project move forward. I'm happy to follow up with my coworker who used to work for the state doing those grants. Because one question is if a state park, there's some they say yes, there's some they say no.
I think there have been parks funded through that.
Yeah.
And you mentioned earlier that you might consider reducing the size or phasing the project. Do you have a sense of what you could do for $190,000?
Yeah, oh, I mean, it's a conversation, I guess, with our builder. I think if you guys have our full packet, there is a diagram in there that has.
I didn't submit that, so
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely would be a stripped down version, but there's a few kind of like clear, easy wins that we think could get us at least down to 210, 215, and then from there it's kind of stripping things away. Which would be
Yeah, the
nice.
footprint wouldn't change, just some of the features would, I think is the way to say that too, right? Maybe the footprint would actually, I guess it would slightly make the park less square footage too, that's an option.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a conversation we need to figure out and with our builder in terms of his cost estimating, but I mean, I think we're, you know, as we said, we've been doing it for 5 years and we're all ready for it to be done one way or the other, so I think we'd really like to build this summer, and I think we're gonna try to build with whatever we got.
This grant, I will say the timeline is 2 years, so this would not, by the time, because
Yep.
even if it's awarded, you have to do full environmental review because it's federal funds. Trying to find a win.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, I mean, if funds like that were to come available, I think we would change our mind, but I think just in terms of hustling and fundraising ourselves, we're all a little burnt out on it.
Right. Well, you know, I think many of us would like to see this become a reality. My sense is that $50,000 is a bit steep for us right now with available funding, but certainly presenting this to the taxpayers on town meeting day would be an option for you. And meanwhile, in the next meeting, we're going to have consideration of the allocating some money to the housing trust, Waterbury Housing Trust. And so we could take your request into consideration at that time as well. And we'll see what the board's appetite is and try to work with them going forward from there.
So that last part, that's pursuing local option money, or?
Yeah, that'd be allocating,
In that bucket.
we've already allocated about 2/3 of the anticipated money that's coming in from the local option tax in this current fiscal year.
Yeah.
And so there's a remaining sum that we're going to be considering at the next meeting. So we'll take this.
Yeah, and what, do you think you need any more information from us that'll help out?
If you were mentioning the economic development impact, it does have to fit one of these buckets that's been predetermined by us, but for us as well. And so if you had that argument from a place like Burlington or something like that, that could be.
Yeah, sounds good, we can get that to you. And then from the process stuff, what's the timing? Let's just say it was all favorable and there was 20K. When would we get that money? I'm just curious there's a couple of things that are coming into play with the sequencing of all this design effort. Is this early to 2025?
The guy who knows just walked out the door. But we are supposed to get an allocation around the 15th of November for the first quarter, which would be July through September, middle of this month. And then the remainder would be coming in January. So how that money gets spread out, I'm not exactly sure yet, but you probably
Okay.
knows better than I do. Yeah.
Can you guys get us some numbers for if we had to consider a more stripped down proposal, what it would be, and what the numbers are?
Yeah.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah. We've been anticipating doing that.
But it's worth it,
Yeah.
at least that's in the conversation.
Yeah.
50K is a big ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just going to say, I don't think anyone would be too terribly upset if you came to us with a request for local option tax funding for less than what you're asking now, and then try and make up the difference on town meeting day and ask the voters directly for the rest.
I was gonna mention, can we do both? But that is a possibility.
It is a possibility to do both. There's nothing in the law that says you can't.
Yeah.
That's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for your.
All right, thank you. Thanks for coming forward.
All right.
Thanks
Thanks, guys.
for the update. Next on the agenda is the amendment to the parking order.
Oh, it should say ordinance.
Ordinance.
Okay,
Yeah, so
I was
we'll-
gonna say.
We can have the conversation, but for purposes of legal correctness, we should probably have this on the next agenda, because if you're amending an ordinance, you should be precise.
Yeah.
So,
But it could be on the consent agenda next time.
okay, let's discuss
But-
it and
so-
see if we can get it on the parking order.
Relatively simple matter. Within the ordinance, there's a few spots in town where between the hours of 8 AM and 6 PM, there's 15-minute parking. One of those spots is in front of 5 Stowe Street, which is the frame shop. And talking with the owner of Stone's Throw Pizza, feels like his business would benefit from 15-minute parking in front. It would help with takeout business. I don't believe that would harm the bagel shop at all, because I think they thrive on relatively short-term patrons. So as the ordinance reads, 15-minute parking between 8 AM and 6 PM is designated on the west side of Stowe Street at 5 Stowe Street. And I'm suggesting that a friendly amendment, which would help the business, would be to say from 5 Stowe Street to 13 Stowe Street, which would allow for several more spaces and would allow for the Public Works Director to legally put up 15-minute signs. As you know, we don't have a whole lot of active enforcement, but I think it would help. I've also tried to work with the owner on the back lot, which is a mix of public and private, and a bit of a
Gray area.
Yeah, it's kind of a kerfuffle back there.
it's not a gray area. It was surveyed when the lot was done, but there's not necessarily an easy solution there, and there's not a solution that likely wouldn't require some construction expense. And that's simply not gonna happen this year, even if the funding was there, so that's a conversation for a later time, I think. There may be a way to take away a little bit of a raised paved area, or reduce it and add a space or two, but nothing dramatic that we can do.
Like,
Was there any, because we had a conversation about potential handicap spot right in that Stowe Street area?
There's one put in.
There was one put in at the church, at the
church,
Methodist.
right in the corner of the church. Okay.
Yeah. And there is one in the parking lot behind, and then, nothing formal in front of you today, but in talking to Skip, there's an agreement we're gonna work on to make that parking lot at the Wesleyan Church public lot, with some ability for the church to use it for church purposes when desired, but we could also designate a handicap space there.
Yeah, no,
So, Tom, have you talked to any of the other businesses? Yeah, I understand what they're asking for, but, you know, the Senior Citizen Center, they're hard up for parking. You've got Rotary Club that has meetings there. I'm just concerned that if you make several spaces along that street, no parking, 15 minutes only, where the people who are parking there now go? So, just a question.
Yep, yeah, I've had some conversations, not quite everyone.
okay.
I would also, I guess I'm echoing Bill's point here, there are quite a few apartments above those businesses, and I would assume that those individuals own vehicles, and there's a lot of times that back lot is full, and that public parking comes in handy. And I think there's plenty of other parking spots in or around the Stowe Street area if someone's going to grab a pie from Stone's Throw or grabbing a bagel from Casey's. I don't think pulling in and pulling out is necessarily like the biggest concern on
Mhm.
Stowe Street right now.
Alyssa?
I guess this is a perception that I assumed it was only on that one side that we were
Correct,
proposing, am I incorrect? So just to
Yeah.
clarify, for like the senior center, we're looking at the ones across the street.
Well, the
I've-
Senior Center, people, if they're having a meeting there, they park.
Oh, yeah, I'm not
anywhere.
disputing both, I just wanna be clear that we weren't proposing 15 minutes on that side,
Oh,
we're
I
looking at
understand.
the other.
Yeah.
And I guess the other point would be is Stone's Throw also talked about an outdoor space, obviously seasonally, that's not happening now, but I do think there's a limit as to how many spaces for one business.
Mhm.
You said 5 to 13, that's 4 parking spaces?
Yeah, in total, there's one now.
Yeah, I mean, to me, adding at least one makes sense. This one gets bagels a lot. I just feel like there is a rotation on that
I do go
street.
there every day,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think there's a compelling argument.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not worried about the apartments, but I feel like most of the apartments actually are the ones that have their own parking lot that is now not being used for public use because it's being used for apartment parking.
Mhm.
Not the Simpson Graves, but they assume their own parking too.
No, I agree, I just think in the event that a tenant of that building needs to park on the street, it would behoove us to make sure they're allowed to park in front of their own apartment building for more than 15 minutes.
Just to pile on, I'll just observe that Stone's Throw has sort of two models of business. One is the takeout pizza, which this 15-minute parking would abet, but then also they have a sit-down restaurant. And I'm wondering if they might be defeating that end of their business by making people disinclined to park there and go to dinner there. Perhaps this is appearing to me like it may not be on the consent agenda because there are more questions than we anticipated.
And I'm not arguing for it, I'm presenting the request.
Yeah. Right.
I'm agnostic.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, I'd be interested just in hearing their reasoning as to how it's going to improve their business.
And does it conflict with the jet out that was proposed in the late summer?
I think so. 4 spaces.
Yeah, we had the opportunity to talk with them, with the EFUD board. It sounds as though that was sort of an opportunity that came and went with the season.
Yeah, right.
Well, you said it was only till 5 o'clock.
The ordinance is written as 8 AM to 6 PM.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So
Dinner time.
dinner time, they would be,
Yeah.
4:30 or whatever.
I mean, they don't open until, as it stands, they're not open for lunch, so I think they open at 3 or 4 right now,
Mhm. Okay, that makes more sense.
so it's not a big daily impact from their perspective, but.
Other questions? Yeah, Alyssa?
In terms of process, if this is on a subsequent agenda as amendment to parking ordinance, do we have discretion to describe what to modify? Like,
Yeah,
say,
absolutely.
approve 2 spaces and then it's for 30 days? Like, I'm saying we don't have to say what the specific amendment is.
You do need to be reasonably specific, I think.
That's
But
just
that
my
being
question
said,
around.
we've seen consent agendas where the consent part took up half a page, so I think that's possible.
Right. I guess I'm curious, again, in the spirit of the last conversation we just had, if one more space to start. I was like, I mean, the current space, the at the time business owner advocated for strongly and felt like was impactful and useful, so I'm not opposed to creating another one. I'm hearing the concerns personally about 4 maybe being a lot.
Kane?
To honor our guests who were here making a very impassioned plea for help when it comes to crime, how are we going to enforce a parking ban?
I think the town manager mentioned that he had a lot of enforcement.
Yeah. I think people are generally mindful of the signs and the laws. And I think people who don't live here don't know that we don't necessarily have enforcement.
Right. And the private lot does have enforcement, so
Yeah.
I guess a rub-off effect.
Since you brought that up, does the ordinance, there's a sign that the Hender's Bakery puts out, is that in the ordinance or not? Or does she just do that on her own?
We've got,
So
let's
that
see,
is correct.
Yeah, that'd be my guess.
yeah, we've got,
Should we rubber in?
No.
We should do the
we've got
opposite.
some 15-minute on South Main Street, and we've got Elm Street, and one spot on Stowe Street, but that's a fair point.
Nothing on Winooski?
I'm not,
Or
Is it
north-
on
or north-
Winooski or South Main, or North Main?
it's on Winooski that she.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right next to
Right.
the
It's
right on the corner.
I'm not arguing that it shouldn't be there, I don't remember ever writing the ordinance and including those spots. So
Right.
if it's something that you want, it should be in the ordinance, that's all.
Yeah. Is hers 15 minutes, or is it?
I think her sign says business.
Yeah, business
Yeah,
parking
sort of
only,
like
correct.
business only, something
Yeah.
like that.
Mm.
But it's handwritten, so it's not.
Well, I commonly have business on Winooski Street, so I guess I would argue that.
At least businessman.
You gotta talk to your town representative.
Mhm.
Yeah, good point. All right, well, we've got, I think probably need to kick this down the road for 2 weeks. and,
Okay.
Let's see if we can get a more comprehensive ordinance out of this. Any other comments on this?
I'll just make one
Yes.
quick point of saying I appreciate starting slower and starting with 1 additional spot as opposed to 3. I think makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
And I think at some point, we're gonna have to have a bigger discussion about parking. I know it's like the least sexy select board topic.
Oh, I
but
don't
at
think
this-
so. I think-
at thi-
It
at
is
this- I
a
think-
great select board topic.
I'm just acknowledging that 51 South Main Street groundbreaking is gonna be soon. I think we're gonna hear public inquiries.
Is that not
so I
also
think-
on the 15th? Right after breakfast?
I've heard November or December.
Tom?
But-
The closing is scheduled for the first week of December.
Oh.
Groundbreaking, I believe, will be the 15th. That's not set
Of
in stone.
December? Oh, okay.
And I'm not saying
It's
that
gonna be a
I,
little tougher to break ground on.
Yeah, might
We
well
have
be.
machines for that.
but the point being, I think we're gonna get inquiries, so having a coherent response as to what municipal parking isn't available and what changes we've made, and I'm also still unclear with the zoning update, if we've gotten rid of the thing where we have to stack parking cars 1 million high for parking regs.
I think we still do.
So at some point, we need a healthy cleanup of the parking ordinance. I'm not saying it's top priority, but there's lots to dig into there.
Not to mention the 2 Toyotas stacked on top of each other.
Yeah, that was,
That's framed in your
that was
home.
parking on the reservoir.
Yeah, I still have it. I still have that image. It's not something you get rid of.
All right, if I don't hear anything more, we'll move on to outreach plan for Woody Avenue.
Yep, so we've delayed this and we've had a struggle because we've been unable to get quotes yet to build the new building, the new storage building we would need. We've got a quote to remove the asbestos from the roof of the building we're currently using. It's one quote, so the vendor doesn't want us to say that number in public.
Mm-hmm.
But in rough numbers, between that roof removal, presumably we do the rest of the building, I think at fairly minimal cost. But between the roof removal and the sewer line, we're in the range of $225,000 to $250,000. So the new building would add to that, of course, and then we'd have to recover those costs by selling the lots. So it's still, I don't want to quite speculate on a new building until I have a reasonable quote from a contractor. But I feel like until we get that number, we don't know that we have a project that cash flows, so it's better to hold off until then.
Okay. Do you have a timeframe? Or when you expect that?
Hopefully by the 18th. Now, a very nice looking, I think, steel frame building that would meet the character of the neighborhood and be a lot nicer than what's there. You can buy for 80 to 100 in the size we need. It's the slab and the insulation that we've struggled to get the quote on so far.
Any other questions about the Woody Avenue project?
I guess with regards to outreach, I mean, even if I recognize that's a challenge, like, do we invite the neighbors to the 18th? I think that's my question on all of this. Is
Sure.
just in the interest, like, do we talk about where we're at in terms of proposals on the 18th? I guess that's hard then in terms of delay, like, if we commit to doing it the 18th. I said I would do door knocking, and I'm committing to my thing I said I would do. I'll do it for the 18th if that's the day.
Well, yeah, let me know a couple days.
Are we gonna do it like a DRB application that we have to send certified letters to all the homeowners?
I was just gonna throw some flyers on doorsteps, but whatever we wanna do. We can put it on
Yeah.
the town website. I guess my question is just, should we do it the 18th? Should we do it the 4th? At some point, we gotta pick a date and say what we're gonna say, just so we can invite people, and I'm agnostic as to when that is. I guess my goal in this agenda item was just to create a plan.
I'm just noticing that we've got potentially the discussion of the Worcester Range Management Plan, the Housing Trust Fund.
I assume the skateboarders will be back.
And the skateboard, and
Parking again.
Waterbury Dog Park, and then parking.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if it wouldn't make more sense to put this Woody Avenue on the first meeting in December, which would be December, no, I see 2nd. All right. Unless there's any more comments on that, we can move to the agenda for the 18th. We already have those items that I just mentioned.
Can you say them one more time, just so I can write it down?
Sure. The A&R Worcester Range Management Plan. The Housing Trust Fund. The housing, chair of the Housing Task Force. The Waterbury Dog Park. And then I should add the skate park. And parking issues. Parking ordinance.
Lots of parks.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so it'd be,
Park
forward
every
with
meeting.
that. I thought we were gonna move the Woody.
Woody, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't wanna put extra pressure on Tom to get a quote, for the building, you know. Let's give him sufficient time to get that together so he can get the clear,
Do you think
plan.
Tom will be ready to flesh out the parking issues by 2 weeks?
Yeah.
All right. Anything else that people feel like we need to move up from the parking lot to the 18th, or is that a full enough agenda for you?
Do we want to add police presence to the parking lot, or is that not really? Just, we've had a couple requests lately about upping police presence in town. I don't know if we want to throw them in the parking lot, or if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I don't know, I guess my feeling is that this is a little bit more pointed about what we can do about known drug dealers in town.
Yeah.
We've got a couple houses here that are pretty well identified. One where there was a failed shooting just 3 weeks ago, and then others that seem to be pretty well identified out on Route 2. And if a significant part of the town knows this is happening, and the state police have been notified and are pursuing things, I think it's incumbent upon us to try to see what has been tried, what further can be done, and try to generate more effective action to curb it.
Does that require bringing TJ into one of our meetings?
I think it does.
Yeah.
I think TJ and I think someone from the state's attorney's office.
Mhm. Yeah.
So that's
So, I'm thinking maybe that might take a while to
Yeah.
pull together, so I'm gonna suggest that we put that on the second, rather than trying to get it done in the next 2 weeks.
I don't know if we have a lot within our control in the town to do something. I think it comes from more upper levels of the judicial branch to, you know, if they're not gonna do anything about it, what do we do, you know? It's a tough situation.
I think we should probably do our best to dissuade neighbors from taking matters into their own hands, lest they also be arrested.
Mm-hmm.
I also don't think we have no agency. I mean, we made Tom sit on the VLCT policy platform Zoom, so like there's, you know, we're not the only town dealing with this, and I think, I mean, if you go on VT Digger, we're not the only town dealing with this, and so understand. Right, if and where there's an advocacy role, I'm not saying us as a board are doing it, but I think there's folks we can lean on if there's concerns in our community around amplifying or whatever it may be. I don't know what the answer is, but I think we are being real about the constraints we do have, and so if there's creative things we can do in the interim, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, we're using our public platform to try to pour more light onto the situation. And generally, that will have some impact, whether people feel more pressure to take more punitive action or take some type of further action to, you know, stop vehicles that are under suspicion, issue warrants where they may be needed. We don't really know all the answers. Yeah.
The people who spoke earlier mentioned the conversation with Teresa Wood and that she referenced some public safety meeting. When you met last week, Teresa was here at last Wednesday's extra meeting that you had. She mentioned, and Lieutenant Howard spoke at that meeting on Zoom. She mentioned that there's some public safety meeting that she's looking to convene, and it sounds like the same players that you're talking about.
Yeah, same.
Okay. I don't know if she meant that under the auspices of the Selectboard meeting, or just a general, more ad hoc kind of the state reps.
I think in general she was hoping for more of a neighborhood style meeting.
Okay. I haven't heard
Does
anything
she-
about a date for that.
Yeah, I was wondering about that too.
Just, no, there were a couple emails about it today.
Okay.
Good
So,
movement.
let's, see what happens from that, and that still leaves us a bit of time to see if we can convene a meeting and get representative, state's attorney, and TJ, perhaps even higher up. Yep.
I'm wondering for December 2nd, Tom, if like we could do a schedule of what the budget is? I just realized as I was like
Yep.
awkwardly explaining it to the skate park that we, I think,
We'll do
have
that.
a planned outline for town meeting, but I don't know if
We'll
that
do
seems too soon.
Let's add that to the 18th. I think the schedule is something we can get
Just
done.
around when we're making decisions about what
Yeah.
for our,
When are we gonna start meeting weekly about the budget?
he'll tell us
So-
on the 18th.
Yeah, normally that would happen in January.
Right, normally, but I know you kind of want to move that process a little bit.
Well, if the intent is to have a community meeting in January, we'll have to meet weekly in December, get that done.
Oakley dokley.
Okay.
Dave, I said it
What
was
is
free for work.
do we have an executive session?
I do not.
Ooh,
We do?
we do
I
not.
don't.
We do not, okay. All right, if we're all, got everything out on the table that we need for the meeting for the agenda for the 18th, and we've already got some things listed for December 2nd, and we have no executive session, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn this meeting of the Waterbury Select Board.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.